For 30 years, Father Michael Donnelly was the heartbeat of St. Catherine's Parish in Mesquite, Nevada, a town so small that gossip moved faster than the wind and nothing stayed secret for long. He was the priest you called at 3 a.m. when someone was dying, the one who remembered every baptism date, drove hours through the desert to bring communion to shut-ins, and sat quietly in hospital rooms just holding a hand. His sermons were short, his jokes dry, and his presence calming. He never raised his voice or asked for special treatment. Father Mike never wanted attention, said longtime parishioner Margaret Chen. He'd show up to potlucks with store-bought cookies because he couldn't cook. He drove that awful beige sedan that sounded like it might fall apart. When my mother was dying, he sat with her for 6 hours, just holding her hand. That's who he was. But on February 12, 2019, at 2:43 a.m., security cameras in Las Vegas showed a very different picture. A man in a black clerical coat and white collar walked calmly through the service corridors of the Sunset Diamond Casino, carrying 2 canvas donation bags. His face was half hidden under a beretta. His pace was slow, steady, almost peaceful. 3 security checkpoints let him pass without a word. He went straight to a restricted vault door, entered, and emerged 17 minutes later with the same bags, now sagging under the weight. Security officer Ramon DeVito watched him on the monitors. I figured he was a chaplain moving donations, he later admitted. We get clergy in for charity stuff all the time. He looked right. He moved right. Priests don't rob casinos, right? He let out a bitter laugh. I even waved when I passed him in the hallway. Said, "Good evening, Father." He blessed me, actually blessed me, while carrying $48 million. By 5:15 a.m., when the cash team discovered 8 missing canisters, Father Michael Donnelly was already 230 miles away, crossing into Utah with $48 million in the trunk of his Camry. He stopped at a Denny's, ordered scrambled eggs, bacon, and coffee, left a $20 tip. The waitress later remembered him as the nicest customer I had that morning. To understand how that man became this man, you have to go back to Reno. Born in 1957, Michael grew up under neon glow and slot machine jingles. His father, Patrick, dealt blackjack on the graveyard shift. His mother, Catherine, cleaned hotel rooms in a neighboring casino. Money came in and went straight back out. Rent, food, bills. Always enough to get by, never enough to rest. He'd wake up for school to find his father passed out on the couch in his dealer's vest, reeking of cigarettes and stale casino air. His mother came home exhausted from scrubbing luxury suites his family could never afford. We weren't poor, he once told a seminary classmate. We were just one bad week away from it. I watched casinos take everything from people and give nothing back. What set Michael apart was his relationship with numbers. By 12, he could calculate poker odds in his head. By 15, he was tearing through every probability book in the local library. His high school math teacher, David Corman, never forgot him. Michael wasn't just gifted, Corman said later. He was exact. I caught him at lunch working through roulette models. When I asked why, he said, I like finding the flaws in systems that pretend to be random. That line stuck with me. Even then, he was hunting for weaknesses. His test scores were perfect, SAT, ACT, everything. Teachers told him he could go anywhere, but places like MIT and Stanford were out of reach financially, so he stayed in Nevada. He earned a full scholarship to UNLV and majored in mathematics and theoretical probability. His professors assumed he'd end up on Wall Street or inside a gaming commission office. Best student I ever taught, said Professor Linda Martinez, and the quietest. He saw patterns other people missed. If you work around casinos long enough, you learn to fear people like that. He'd sit in the back row, never spoke unless spoken to, but his work was flawless, Professor Martinez recalled. One semester, I assigned a simple project on casino game probabilities. Most students gave me basic math. Michael wrote a 40-page analysis on systemic vulnerabilities in casino security. I gave him an A or plus and joked, just don't use this for evil. He laughed and said, I'm becoming a priest, not a criminal. Turns out, he became both. At 24, to everyone's shock, Michael Donnelly left mathematics behind and enrolled in seminary. His closest friend, Father Gregory Haynes, remembered asking why. He told me, numbers are beautiful, but people need saving more than equations do. I thought that was profound. Looking back, I'm not sure he ever stopped thinking like a mathematician. He just moved his skills into a different world. Seminary fit him well. He excelled in theology, philosophy, pastoral care, but he never abandoned his numbers. He kept notebooks full of equations, probability charts, statistical diagrams. I once asked what he was working on, said Father Timothy Chen. He showed me pages analyzing 5 years of parish donation data, predictive models, optimal fundraising windows, giving trends. I said, Mike, you're supposed to be studying scripture. He said, God gave me a gift for numbers. It would be a sin not to use it. Ordained in 1983, Donnelly was sent to St. Catherine's Parish in Mesquite, Nevada, an 18,000-person desert town with one grocery store, 2 gas stations, and a parish on the verge of closing. He arrived in a used Honda Civic packed with books, clothes, and his math notebooks hidden under the bed. He transformed the parish. In 6 months, he stabilized finances. In a year, attendance doubled. In 5 years, St. Catherine's became the most stable parish in the diocese. He ran the church like a Fortune 500 company, said Deacon Paul Riviera. Every donation accounted for, every expense justified. The diocese auditors loved him. Honestly, he could have been a CEO. And every week for 30 years, Donnelly made the same trip, 60 miles to the diocesan office in Las Vegas, driving straight through the Strip, past armored trucks, casinos bursting with cash, tourists chasing. Losses. I once asked if the casinos bothered him, Deacon Riviere said. He told me, they are monuments to human weakness. I thought he was being poetic. Now I know he was observing. People always ask when he decided to steal $48 million. The truth? There wasn't one moment. He lived on $32,000 a year, drove a beat-up Camry, owned almost nothing. No debts, no addictions, no secret accounts. He lived like a monk, said Margaret Chen. But he had time and curiosity. In 2014, St. Catherine's hosted a toy drive fundraiser at the Sunset Diamond Casino. Donnelly was the coordinator. He arrived in full clerical attire and walked through security without an ID check. Operations Director Derek Paulson gave him a full tour. Donnelly asked polite questions: how donations were collected, who handled them, when vaults were opened. Derek, assuming it was about accountability, told him everything. Security footage showed Donnelly pausing at a metal donation vault, studying its lock for several seconds. That was the blueprint moment, Derek said later. I didn't know it then. Over the next 4 years, Donnelly returned a dozen times for events: Easter drives, Thanksgiving meals, Christmas programs. He blessed employees, joked about slot machines, smiled at every guard, and all the while he watched. He noted which guards checked badges and which didn't. He marked shift changes, camera blind spots, doors propped open, patterns everyone else ignored. Then he began quietly gathering tools: a $47 lock impression kit, reinforced hidden pockets sewn into clerical coats, canvas donation bags identical to the casinos, a magnetic override tool that could bypass older electronic latches. Nothing illegal, nothing alarming, but together, an entire toolkit for the perfect crime. In late 2018, he applied for a legitimate renovation grant through the casino's charitable foundation. It required site visits and access to back corridors. He asked innocent questions about badge backups, vault locks, donation schedules. We trusted him completely, Security Supervisor Janet O'Reilly said. We told him everything. By the end of 2018, Donnelly had the knowledge, the tools, the access, the timing patterns. He needed only one last piece: a badge. In January 2019, his old seminary friend, Father Gregory Haynes, flew in from Chicago for a conference. They met at a modest Italian place off the Strip. Cheap wine, big plates of pasta, the kind of place old friends linger. Michael seemed a bit worn out, Gregory later recalled. He said he wasn't sleeping, that his mind wouldn't shut off. I told him he was overworking. At one point, Gregory went to the restroom, leaving his coat and his diocesan access badge on his chair. When he got back, Donnelly was on his phone. Lunch ended with a hug, a promise of prayers, and a casual goodbye. Only that evening did Gregory realize his badge was missing. He searched everywhere, then reported it lost. The diocese promised to deactivate it and issue a new one, but the process took weeks. Weeks that were just enough. He stole from me, Gregory said later. Not just the badge, our friendship. Now I look back and wonder if he'd been using me for years. The badge had Gregory's photo, But that hardly mattered. Most staff glanced at the collar, not the picture. If anyone questioned it, Donnelly could shrug and blame diocesan bureaucracy. They put the wrong photo on it. I've been trying to get it fixed. With that badge, he now had the last piece. The night of the heist, February 12, 2019, wasn't chosen at random. For months, Donnelly had tracked three things: major events that stretched security, staffing gaps, and vault access windows during shift changes. He waited until all three stacked in his favor. A last-minute boxing match brought in thousands of guests and massive betting. Security Director Maria Sandoval pulled officers from quieter posts to cover the arena and gaming floor. The vault team was cut down. Two cash room supervisors called in sick the day before. One had the flu, one a family emergency. Both real, both disastrous. HR couldn't fully backfill. The cash side of the operation would be understaffed on a critical night. And, as always, the security shift change happened at 2:30 a.m. For roughly 4 minutes, supervisors were in handoff mode, talking, signing forms, splitting attention between outgoing and incoming duties. That was the gap he'd been watching. On the afternoon of February 12th, he still looked like a normal priest doing normal work. He celebrated Mass at St. Catherine's, preaching about Job and how God's tests reveal what we're truly capable of. Afterward, he stood at the door shaking hands. "You okay, Father?" asked mechanic and regular parishioner Tom Ridley. "You look beat." "I've been having trouble sleeping," Donnelly replied, half smiling. "Too many math problems in my head." "Math problems?" Tom joked. "I thought priests dreamed about angels." "Sometimes I dream about numbers," Donnelly said. "Patterns, systems, problems that need solving." Tom laughed and told him to rest. "I will," Donnelly said. It was the last ordinary conversation anyone at St. Catherine's ever had with him. The rest of the afternoon passed quietly. Father Donnelly ate a simple dinner, canned soup and crackers. He read scripture for an hour. He prayed. He packed a small duffel bag with carefully selected items: the duplicate vault key he'd created 2 years earlier, the magnetic override tool, one of his modified clerical coats, the 2 canvas donation bags, a flashlight, and a small notebook where he'd written detailed instructions for himself. He also packed something else: a letter, sealed in an envelope, addressed to Margaret Chen. He left it on his desk with instructions that it should be opened only if something happened to him. The letter would never be opened. Margaret Chen would find it months later after his arrest and refuse to read it. "I don't want to know," she said. "Whatever he wrote, whatever justifications he gave, I don't want to hear them. He betrayed us. That's all I need to know." At 10:47 p.m., Father Donnelly left the parish rectory. Security cameras at the church showed him carrying the duffel bag and wearing his clerical coat. He walked to his car with steady, unhurried steps. No looking over his shoulder. No nervous glances. Just a man going about his business. He drove through the dark Nevada desert, alone on the highway, the only lights coming from distant casinos glowing on the horizon like fallen stars. At 11:23 p.m., he stopped at a 24-hour diner on the outskirts of Las Vegas. He ordered coffee and toast. He read a newspaper, the local section, stories about church fundraisers and community events. He left exact change plus a $20 tip. Waitress Jenny Kroll remembered him clearly. He was calm, maybe even peaceful, like he'd made a decision and was at peace with it. I remember thinking, that's a man who knows who he is. I had no idea what he was about to do. At 12:55 a.m., Father Donnelly parked his beige Camry 3 blocks from the Sunset Diamond Casino in a public parking structure. Level 3, northwest corner, where the surveillance cameras had a blind spot due to poor lighting and an obstructed angle. He sat in the car for 18 minutes. Later, investigators would wonder what he was doing during those 18 minutes. Praying, rehearsing the plan one final time, having second thoughts. Security footage from the parking structure shows him sitting motionless behind the wheel, his head bowed. At 1:13 a.m., he lifts his head, takes a deep breath, and opens the car door. At 1:38 a.m., the boxing match at the Sunset Diamond Casino ended. The crowd erupted, 12,000 people flooding the exits, rushing to the casino floor to celebrate or drown their sorrows, overwhelming security checkpoints, creating chaos in the corridors. At 2:14 a.m., the security shift change began. Officers gathered in the main security office for the handoff briefing. Outgoing Supervisor James Chen reviewed the night's incidents. 3 drunk patrons escorted out, 1 medical emergency in the high roller lounge, 2 suspicious persons reported but cleared. Incoming supervisor Patricia Wong took notes, asked clarifying questions, assigned post-shift duties. The briefing took 4 minutes and 20 seconds, longer than usual because of the boxing match complications. At 2:43 a.m., Father Michael Donnelly entered the Sunset Diamond Casino through the charity services entrance. He used Gregory Haynes's access badge. The magnetic reader beeped green. The door unlocked with a soft click. The security footage is grainy, shot from a high corner angle at a 35-degree downward tilt. Timestamp: Shua 2:43:58. A figure in black moves purposefully down a white hallway, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, casting harsh shadows. His face is angled downward, obscured by the brim of his beretta. He carries 2 folded canvas bags in his left hand. His right hand stays inside his coat pocket, gripping the magnetic override tool. He walks past a janitor pushing a mop bucket. The janitor, Carlos Mendez, nods in acknowledgement. "Good evening, Father." "Good evening, my son," Father Donnelly replies, his voice steady. "God bless your work." Carlos watches him walk away, thinking nothing of it. Just another priest doing late-night charity business. Carlos would later testify to the FBI, his voice shaking with guilt. "I should have known. Something should have felt wrong." But he looked so normal, so calm, like he belonged there. Father Donnelly walks past a delivery entrance where 2 kitchen staff are smoking cigarettes on their break. They wave. He waves back. No one stops him. No one questions him. No one asks for additional identification or wonders why a priest is wandering through restricted corridors at 2:43 in the morning. At 2:46:12, he reaches a service door marked Donation Vault Access, authorized personnel only. The door has 2 locks, a primary mechanical deadbolt and a secondary electromagnetic latch. The mechanical lock requires a physical key. The electromagnetic latch requires either a valid access code or a magnetic override. Father Donnelly pauses. The camera angle shows his shoulders rising and falling with a deep breath. His right hand reaches into his coat pocket and produces the duplicate key he'd created 2 years earlier, filed and tested and perfected in his bedroom at the parish rectory. He inserts it smoothly into the Medeco 5200 mechanical lock. The key slides in without resistance. He turns it clockwise, feeling the internal pins align, the mechanism rotating, the deadbolt retracting. Click. The mechanical lock opens. Now the electromagnetic latch. Father Donnelly pulls the magnetic override tool from his other pocket. A simple device no bigger than a thick marker with powerful neodymium magnets at one end. He places it against the doorframe, directly over the electromagnetic latch mechanism. The magnets create a temporary field disruption, tricking the latch into thinking it's received a valid access code. The latch disengages with a soft electronic buzz. Total time, 8 seconds. Father Donnelly pushes the door open and steps inside. The door closes behind him with a pneumatic hiss. The vault room is small, windowless, lit by a single overhead fluorescent fixture that flickers intermittently. Concrete walls, no decorations, no windows. Just function. 8 cash canisters line the back wall, each one a reinforced steel cylinder about 3 feet tall and 18 inches in diameter. They're painted institutional gray with stenciled numbers, CVO1 through CVO8. Each canister contains between $4 million and $8 million in unsorted bills. 20s, 50s, hundreds collected from donation boxes, slot machine hoppers, poker table banks, high roller exchanges. The money is scheduled for armored transport at 6:15 a.m., just 3 hours away. Father Donnelly has 17 minutes before the next security sweep. According to his calculations based on 4 years of observation, the camera monitoring this corridor operates on a 47-second rotation cycle, and the security officer assigned to this zone typically takes a coffee break around 2:50 a.m. He has time, but not much. He moves to the first canister, CV01. The primary lock is already open. These canisters aren't meant to prevent theft inside the vault room, only during transport. But there's a secondary latch, a simple electromagnetic mechanism designed to trigger an alarm if opened without proper authorization. Father Donnelly places the magnetic override tool against the latch. The tool emits a soft hum. The latch clicks open, no alarm. He lifts the heavy lid. Inside, bundled stacks of cash are organized in clear plastic bags. Hundreds on top, 50s in the middle, 20s on the bottom. He estimates $6.2 million in this canister alone. He begins transferring the money to his canvas bags, working with methodical precision. No wasted movements, no hesitation. His hands move like he's performed this task 1,000 times. He fills the first bag, then the second. Both bags are now heavy, straining at the handles. But there's more money, much more. Father Donnelly removes his outer clerical coat, revealing a second, identical coat beneath it. This one with the enlarged interior pockets that Lynn Nguyen had sewn for him 2 years earlier. He distributes stacks of bills into the 6 hidden pockets, filling each one until the coat hangs heavy on his shoulders. The weight is substantial, perhaps 40 pounds, but the coat's reinforced construction distributes it evenly. He moves to the second canister, CV02. Same process. Override the latch, open the lid, transfer the money. He works through CV03 and CV04, filling his coat pockets to capacity, adding more bills to the canvas bags until they're nearly bursting. He leaves CV05 through CV08 untouched. Taking everything would be too obvious, too greedy. This way, the theft might not be discovered immediately. The untouched canisters suggest a partial theft, possibly an interrupted robbery, maybe even an accounting error. Father Donnelly closes and relatches the 4 canisters he's emptied, making sure everything looks undisturbed from the outside. He checks his watch. 2:49:37. He's been inside for 3 minutes and 25 seconds. He picks up the 2 canvas bags, one in each hand. The weight is immense. Each bag holds roughly $12 million, about 45 pounds of paper currency. He puts on the outer coat over the money-laden inner coat, adjusting the collar, smoothing the fabric. From the outside, he looks like any other priest, perhaps slightly bulkier, but nothing alarming. At 2:50:09, he exits the vault room, closes the door behind him, and walks back down the corridor. Same calm pace, same relaxed posture, same unhurried confidence. His heart is pounding. He can feel it thudding in his chest, can hear blood rushing in his ears, but his face remains serene. His breathing stays steady. His stride never falters. At 2:52:17, he passes security officer Ramon DeVito in the main hallway. Ramon is carrying a coffee cup, heading back to his monitoring station after a quick break. He glances at Father Donnelly, registers the clerical collar and the canvas bags, makes an instant assumption. Charity priest, late-night donation transfer, everything normal. "Good evening, Father," Ramon says, nodding respectfully. "Blessings, my son," Father Donnelly replies, his voice warm and genuine. They passed each other. Ramon continues to his station. Father Donnelly continues toward the exit. 30 seconds later, Ramon sits down at his monitoring desk, sips his coffee, and watches the security feeds. He sees Father Donnelly on camera, walking calmly toward the charity services exit. Ramon thinks nothing of it. At 2:54:41, Father Michael Donnelly exits the Sunset Diamond Casino through the same door he entered. The night air is cold, sharp against his face. He can hear the distant sounds of the strip, cars honking, music thumping from nightclubs, people shouting. He walks 3 blocks to the parking structure, up to level 3, northwest corner. His beige Camry is exactly where he left it. He opens the trunk, places the 2 canvas bags inside, covers them with a blanket. He removes the heavy outer coat, folds it carefully, places it beside the bags. He's now wearing only the inner coat with its hidden pockets, still carrying approximately $12 million against his body. He gets in the car, starts the engine. The old Camry sputters, coughs, then rumbles to life. At 3:11 a.m., Father Donnelly exits the parking structure. He drives east on Interstate 15, heading toward Utah. The highway is nearly empty at this hour, just a few long-haul trucks and late-night travelers. He drives exactly at the speed limit, 65 miles per hour, no faster, no slower. His hands rest lightly on the steering wheel. His eyes scan the road ahead. At 3:47 a.m., he crosses the Nevada-Utah state border. The sign illuminated in his headlights reads, "Welcome to Utah, life elevated." Father Donnelly allows himself a small smile. At 4:15 a.m., he pulls into a rest stop outside St. George, Utah. He parks in a dark corner, away from the main building. He sits in silence for 5 minutes, breathing deeply, processing what he's just done. Then he gets out, walks to the restroom, washes his face with cold water. In the mirror, he sees himself. Same face, same eyes, but something has changed. Something fundamental and irreversible. He drives to a 24-hour storage facility on the outskirts of town. Unit number 4, which he'd rented 3 months earlier under a false name, paying cash for a year in advance. He unlocks the unit, pulls the car inside, closes the door. For the next 40 minutes, he carefully removes the money from the canvas bags in the coat pockets, organizing it into labeled boxes. He counts as he goes, marking each box with the amount and the date. Total, $48,740, slightly more than he'd estimated. The canisters had been fuller than usual, probably because of the boxing match betting action. He stacks the boxes along the back wall of the storage unit, covers them with a tarp, arranges some old furniture and boxes in front to make the space look like ordinary storage. At 5:47 a.m., he locks the storage unit and drives back to Nevada. At 6:30 a.m., he's sitting in a Denny's in St. George, wearing his clerical collar, eating scrambled eggs and bacon, reading his Bible. The waitress, a young woman named Sarah, pours his coffee and smiles. "Early morning, Father?" "Very early," he says. "But the Lord's work doesn't keep regular hours." "That's beautiful," Sarah says. "We need more people like you." Father Donnelly smiles gently. "Thank you. God bless you." At that exact moment, 250 miles away in Las Vegas, casino security supervisor Patricia Wong is conducting her routine morning vault check before the armored truck arrival. She opens the door to the donation vault room. Everything looks normal. 8 canisters, all properly secured, all in their designated positions. She checks the log. No entries since the previous day. She checks the security footage. Nothing unusual, but protocol requires physical verification. She approaches CV01, opens the primary lock, overrides the secondary latch with her access code, lifts the lid. Empty. She freezes, staring at the empty canister, her mind refusing to process what she's seeing. She opens CV02. Empty. CV03. Empty. CV04. Empty. CV05 through CV08. Full. Patricia Wong's hands start shaking. She pulls out her radio. "Security, this is Vault Supervisor Wong. We have a code red. I repeat, code red. 4 canisters are empty. I need the security director and casino management immediately." Within minutes, the Sunset Diamond Casino erupts into controlled chaos. Security locks down the vault area. Managers rush in. Accountants start calculating losses. Security footage is pulled and reviewed. At 5:45 a.m., the FBI is notified. At 6:15 a.m., Special Agent Linda Vasquez arrives at the casino. At 6:30 a.m., she's watching security footage of a priest in a black coat walking calmly through the corridors, carrying 2 canvas bags, waving at security guards, blessing janitors. "Who is that?" she asks. "We don't know," Patricia Wong says, her voice hollow. The badge he used was registered to a Father Gregory Haynes from Chicago, but that's not him. We've already contacted Father Haynes. His badge was stolen 3 weeks ago. Agent Vasquez rewinds the footage, watches it again. The priest's face is mostly obscured, but his body language is remarkable. No nervousness, no furtive glances, just calm, purposeful movement. "He knew exactly what he was doing," she says quietly. "This wasn't opportunistic. This was planned." "How much did he take?" asks Casino Director Richard Fleming, his face pale. Patricia Wong checks her calculations. Based on the collection records and the remaining canisters, approximately $48 million. The room goes silent. $48 million, Fleming repeats slowly. A priest walked out of here with $48 million. "Not just any priest," Agent Vasquez says, still watching the footage. "Look at how he moves. He's been here before. He knows the layout, the timing, the blind spots. This is someone who had access, who studied us, who earned trust." She turns to the security team. "Pull all charity event footage from the past 5 years. Every priest, every clergy member, every religious organization that's had access to this building. I want names, faces, dates. This person didn't just walk in off the street. He was invited." The double life at 9 a.m. on February 13th, less than 7 hours after the theft, while the FBI was still dusting the vault. Father Michael Donnelly drove his old Camry back into Mesquite, Nevada. He didn't look like a man who'd just taken $48 million. He pulled into his usual spot beside the rectory at St. Catherine's, straightened his vestments in the mirror, fresh ones he'd changed into at a rest stop bathroom, grabbed his prayer book, and headed inside. He had a funeral to lead. 84-year-old Eleanor Grant, grandmother of 7, had died peacefully 3 days earlier. Her funeral mass was scheduled for 10 a.m. Donnelly had stayed up late the previous week polishing the eulogy. The church filled quickly. Eleanor's family sat in the front pews, clutching tissues. Neighbors and friends filled the rest. The organ hummed soft hymns while people whispered and cried. At exactly 10 a.m., Father Donnelly stepped from the side door, walked to the altar, and began. We gather today to celebrate the life of Eleanor Grant, a woman who lived faith, family, and service. For 15 minutes, he talked about Eleanor's kindness, her volunteer work, her famous apple pies, the way she always had room at her table. He spoke about how real wealth was measured in love, not in possessions, and how Eleanor had owned little but given everything. Her daughter Patricia sobbed through the homily. Later she would say, "He gave a beautiful eulogy. He held my hand, told me my mother was in heaven, and he cried too. And all I can think now is, how do you steal $48 million and then cry at a stranger's funeral like that? Was he pretending, or was that the real him? Not knowing which side was real, that's what haunts me." After the funeral, he stood at the doors as always, greeting mourners one by one. He hugged the family, offered blessings, accepted the usual condolences about how hard funerals must be for priests. "Beautiful service, Father Mike. Eleanor would have loved it," said parishioner Tom Ridley. "She was a remarkable woman," Donnelly replied gently. "People like her remind us why we do what we do." "You okay?" Tom asked. "You said yesterday you weren't sleeping well." "I'm fine," Donnelly said, smiling. "Honestly, I slept better last night than I have in months. Must have finally cleared my mind." Tom walked away thinking everything was normal. Donnelly watched him go, face unreadable. Later, forensic psychiatrist Dr. Sarah Bennington would describe this as extraordinary compartmentalization. In his mind, she explained, he wasn't a criminal pretending to be a priest. He was both, without contradiction. The part of him that stole the money and the part of him that comforted grieving families lived in separate psychological rooms. He could step from one to the other without feeling like a hypocrite. And the unsettling thing is, he was probably sincere at that funeral. The theft didn't cancel his empathy. He genuinely cared. That's what makes him so disturbing. He was a devoted priest and a calculating thief at the same time. The rest of his day looked equally ordinary. He met with the church accountant to review February's budget. He counseled an engaged couple about marriage. He approved the schedule for the volunteer meals program. At 6 p.m., he led the small Wednesday evening Mass. About 20 parishioners attended. His homily that night was about forgiveness and redemption, quoting the Gospel of Luke, "For with God nothing shall be impossible." Afterward, Margaret Chen thanked him for Eleanor's service. "Are you feeling better? You looked exhausted yesterday." "Much better," he replied. "Sometimes you just have to work through what's troubling you." "Take care of yourself," she said. "We need you." "I will," he promised. That night, in his small rectory bedroom, Father Donnelly slept deeply. No nightmares, no visible guilt. He had finally stepped over a line he'd been circling for years, and on the other side he felt something unexpected. Relief. The investigation begins. While Donnelly was moving through parish life as usual, the FBI in Las Vegas was already in full crisis mode. Special Agent Linda Vasquez had turned a casino conference room into a command center. Photos, timelines, and security stills covered the walls. 12 agents, investigators, analysts, technicians, crowded around a table. "Here's what we know," Vasquez said. "The theft happened between 2:43 and 2:54 a.m. The suspect used a stolen access badge registered to Father Gregory Haynes, Chicago Diocese. No forced entry, no alarms. 4 cash canisters emptied, 4 left untouched. Total loss, about $48 million. She clicked to a still frame of a priest-like figure walking down a corridor. Male, about 60 to 65, around 5'10 to 6'0", medium build, clerical clothing, face partly obscured, Caucasian, graying hair. Agent Marcus Chen, their behavioral specialist, studied the image. Look at his posture, Chen said. He's not nervous. Shoulders back, steady pace, no fumbling. This is someone who's been here before. He knows where he's going. He believes he belongs here. So he probably had legitimate access at some point, Vasquez said. Security didn't challenge him because he looked like he was supposed to be there. We start with clergy and religious organizations that have had access to this building in the last 5 years. The casino handed over access logs, event records, and footage. Dozens of churches, mosques, synagogues, interfaith charities. Hundreds of clergy. We're looking for patterns, Vasquez said. Multiple visits, strange questions, extended tours, construction permits. Anyone who wanted more access than they strictly needed. Financial analyst Jennifer Park scanned records. In 5 years, and she reported, they've hosted 47 religious events. About 200 clergy got temporary badges. Chen worked through the database, filtering for repeat visitors and permit holders. Then something popped. Here, he said, St. Catherine's Parish in Mesquite applied for a charitable construction permit in 2018. The coordinating priest received extended access to plan the project. Name, Vasquez asked. Father Michael Donnelly. They pulled up his diocesan ID, early 60s, gray hair, kind eyes, clerical collar. The physical profile fit the grainy footage almost too well. Get everything, Vasquez ordered. Employment, travel, bank records, background checks. 30 years if we can. Over the next 3 days, they built the profile, ordained in 1983, serving St. Catherine's for decades. No criminal record, clean audits, good standing. Parishioners and diocesan officials described him as steady, dedicated, almost boring in his reliability. But one pattern stood out. He had visited the casino 14 times in 5 years, more than any other priest in the system. He attended charity events, but also requested extra tours. He asked about security procedures, donation handling, vault systems. He was gathering intel, Park said. Listen to this. How do you handle large cash donations? What happens if someone loses an access badge? Are the vault keys digital or mechanical? Those aren't casual questions. Footage showed him laughing with staff, blessing guards, chatting with employees. Everyone seemed relaxed around him. He weaponized trust, Vasquez said quietly. The collar was his disguise. Nobody searches the priest. Then they interviewed janitor Carlos Mendez. Shown the corridor still, Carlos didn't hesitate. That's the priest I saw that night, he said, around 2:45 a.m. He said, well, good evening, my son, and blessed me. I thought he was doing late charity work or something. Would you recognize him again? Maybe. His voice was calm, deep, soothing, and he walked like he knew what he was doing. They showed him a lineup of diocesan photos. Carlos pointed straight at one. That's him, I'm sure. It was Father Michael Donnelly. On March 8th, agents arrived at St. Catherine's with a warrant. His room was small, bed, desk, bookshelf, everything neat. Parish financial records were perfectly in order. No stacks of cash, no luxuries. But deep in a filing cabinet, behind dusty forms from the 1990s, they found a black leather notebook. 200 pages filled with tight, deliberate handwriting. Technical notes described the casino's medical lock, the electromagnetic latch, and how to duplicate the key using impression kits. Timelines laid out shift changes, camera blind spots, in the 4-minute gap at 2:30 a.m. when security was distracted by supervisor handoff. Optimal entry window, one entry read, 2:43, 2:47 a.m. Camera rotation plus shift change, attention drop. Another page tracked his practice, buying a lock kit, putting in 40 hours, raising his success rate above 90%. Then there was the philosophical section. He wrote about 4 decades on a modest salary while watching the casino profit from addiction and desperation. He counted funerals of people destroyed by gambling debt. He noted that $48 million equaled roughly 87 days of casino profit, and what that amount could mean in medical bills, rent, education, food. He asked if taking the money would be theft or reallocation, crime or justice. He wondered if this was a test from God, not to resist temptation, but to act. He ended with, estimated execution, February 2019. Agent Vasquez closed the notebook, fingers tight on the cover. He doesn't think he's a crook, she said. He thinks he's correcting a moral equation. A week later, with that notebook and the mounting evidence, they got a warrant for his arrest. On March 15th, they went back to St. Catherine's at dawn. The bed was made. The room was spotless. On the desk lay a short note on church stationery. "I'm sorry for the pain this will cause. The money was taken not for personal gain, but to help those in need. That doesn't cancel the crime. It only explains it. I will not stay hidden forever, but there is work yet to do. When it is finished, I will accept the consequences." MD. He had disappeared. The return. For 6 weeks, Father Donnelly stayed ahead of the search. He lived on the road in his Camry, paid cash, avoided phones and credit cards, slept in parking lots and cheap motels. He changed small details, glasses, hats, jackets, but never stopped dressing like a priest. The FBI chased rumors and partial sightings across the Southwest, but he was always gone a day or two before they arrived. Then, on April 19th, he did something nobody expected. He came home. It was 6:30 a.m. at the Mesquite Municipal Cemetery. The sky was pale and the grounds were empty, except for one man in dark clothes standing by a newer headstone. Tom Ridley had come, as he did every week, to visit his wife's grave. He carried flowers and a bottle of water. As he approached, he noticed the lone figure a little distance away, head bowed. There was something familiar in the posture. He finished tending his wife's grave, then walked over. The man was standing at Eleanor Grant's headstone. "Father Mike," Tom said. Donnelly turned. He looked thinner, older, worn out. His collar was stained, his coat rumpled. Dark circles ringed his eyes. But it was him. "Hello, Tom," he said quietly. "Everyone's looking for you," Tom blurted. "The FBI, the police. You're on the news nonstop." "I know," Donnelly said. "Then why come back here of all places?" He looked down at Eleanor's name engraved in stone. "Because I never really said goodbye," he answered. "I led her funeral, but that day my head was somewhere else. She deserved better. This was my last mass as just a priest, before everything changed." Tom struggled to reconcile the man he'd known with the fugitive standing in front of him. "Why did you do it?" Tom finally asked. "What could possibly justify stealing that kind of money?" "Because the numbers don't lie," Donnelly said. "People do." "What does that even mean?" "It means I spent 30 years watching people destroyed by gambling while institutions treated it like entertainment," he said calmly. "The casino turns addiction into profit. They design machines to hook people who can't afford to lose. I've buried people who killed themselves over debt. I've counseled their kids. And every week I drive past that building full of flashing lights and fake joy, knowing what it cost my parishioners." "So you stole from them," Tom said. "I redirected," Donnelly answered. "From a place built on suffering to people drowning because of it, the money does more good out here than in their vault." "That's not how the law works," Tom snapped. "You don't get to appoint yourself judge and jury." "Someone has to act," Donnelly replied. "I'm a priest. I see the fallout up close. If I don't act, who will?" "Plenty of people," Tom insisted. "Social workers, charities, programs." "Not fast enough," Donnelly cut in. "Assistance takes months. Families lose everything while they wait. I can hand them an envelope today." Tom searched his face for some sign of doubt and found none. "You need to turn yourself in," Tom said. "Now." "I will," Donnelly said. "That's why I'm here. I knew you'd be visiting your wife this morning. I knew you'd recognize me. I'm ready." "Then why run for 6 weeks?" Tom demanded. "To prove it could be done," Donnelly said. "To show what that money can do outside a casino. To test their systems and my faith in what I was doing. I needed to finish the work." "You think any of that will matter in court?" "Maybe not," he said. "But it matters to me." Tom pulled out his phone. "I'm calling the police." "I know," Donnelly said. "I'm not going anywhere." As Tom dialed, he asked one more question. "Why Eleanor's grave?" "Because she was the last person I served before crossing that line," Donnelly answered. "She's a reminder of who I was. I wanted to say goodbye to that version of myself." "And who are you now?" He thought for a moment. "I don't know yet," he said. "Criminal, priest, something in between. The court will put a label on it. History might pick another. But I'm not sorry for what I did with the money. That's the part that surprises me most." Distant sirens grew louder. When the Mesquite police and the waiting FBI team arrived, they found Donnelly sitting on a bench, hands folded. Agent Vasquez approached with handcuffs. Father Donnelly, you're under arrest for grand theft, fraud, money laundering, and abuse of access credentials, she said. You have the right to remain silent. I know my rights, he replied, and I'll waive them. I'm prepared to confess. Where's the money, she asked. In 3 storage units, 2 states, he said. I'll give you addresses and keys. There's about 31 million left. Left? The rest is gone, he said simply. Used, where it should have been all along. You understand what you've done is illegal, Vasquez said as she cuffed him. Yes, he answered. Illegal isn't the same as wrong. As agents led him to the car, he turned back to Tom, who stood frozen among the headstones. Thank you for your friendship, Donnelly called. I'm sorry it ends like this. Tom said nothing. He watched the FBI SUV disappear down the road. The trial and judgment. The federal trial began on June 3, 2019 in Las Vegas. It was less about what happened, most facts were not in dispute, and more about what it meant. Reporters filled the benches. Protesters outside waved signs that either painted Donnelly as a monster or a martyr. The courtroom atmosphere felt more like a public referendum than a simple criminal proceeding. Assistant U.S. Attorney Janet Wu led the prosecution. Calm, precise, relentless. The defense was headed by Public Defender Marcus Riley, who took the case not to claim Donnelly was innocent, but, as he told reporters, because sometimes the story behind a crime matters as much as the crime. Jury selection lasted 3 days. The challenge was finding 12 people who could listen to a story about a priest who stole millions and still judge him by the law, not by sympathy or outrage. In her opening statement, Wu kept it simple. This is not complicated. The defendant planned a theft for 4 years. He copied keys, used a stolen badge, exploited security gaps, and took $48 million. Then he ran. His robes and philosophy do not cancel those facts. If we let people excuse crimes by claiming good intentions, we no longer have law. We have chaos. Riley didn't bother denying the theft. My client is guilty of what he's charged with, he said. He admits it. The question is not whether he broke the law, but why and what that should mean for his punishment. For 40 years, he lived simply and served the poor. He watched gambling addiction destroy lives while casinos prospered. He snapped in a very calculated, meticulous way. Illegal? Absolutely. Evil? That's less clear. You are allowed to see the whole man, not only the worst thing he's done. The prosecution's witnesses painted a clear picture. Casino employees described Donnelly's repeated visits and unusually specific questions. Security experts explained how sophisticated the theft was. FBI agents walked through the notebook, the planning, the confession. One security officer, Ramon DeVito, described passing Donnelly in the hallway that night. I said, "Good evening, Father," he testified. He blessed me while carrying bags of stolen cash. I think about that every day. How did I not see it? The defense called a different lineup. Parishioners described baptisms, hospital visits, late-night counseling sessions, funerals where Donnelly sat and cried with families. People he'd helped over decades spoke of rent quietly paid, food delivered without fanfare. Margaret Chen described him as the best person I knew for 23 years. He did a terrible thing, she said through tears, but it doesn't erase everything else. The defense also called experts, psychologists to explain his compartmentalization, ethicists to talk about moral disobedience, a theology professor to place his actions in a broader context of religious figures who defied secular law in the name of conscience. But the turning point was Donnelly's own testimony. He took the stand in a plain gray suit, no collar. He looked older, thinner, but steady. Wu began. Did you take $48 million from the Sunset Diamond Casino? Yes, he said. Did you plan it for 4 years? Yes. Did you use your position as a priest to gain trust and access? Yes. Do you deny any of the facts in the indictment? No. Then what exactly do you dispute? The meaning, he said. You call it theft. I call it intervention. You mean redistribution? Call it what you like, he replied. The money was extracted from vulnerable people in a predatory system. I moved it to people drowning in debt and crisis. You don't get to decide that, Wu said sharply. We have laws for a reason. Are you above them? No, he said. I knew I'd be punished. I chose to do it anyway. You think that makes you noble? She asked. No, he replied. Just responsible for my choice. Wu pressed him about Father Haynes, whose badge he stole. That is the one part I truly regret, he said, voice cracking slightly. Gregory trusted me. I betrayed that trust. There's no excuse. But you did it anyway. Yes. Riley's cross-examination focused on motive and pattern. In 40 years, did you ever take money for yourself? He asked. No. Did you live in luxury? Travel first class? Own a second home? No. I lived in a small rectory room. And with the 48 million, I lived in my car, ate cheap food, and gave the money away. Are you asking this jury to acquit you? Riley asked. No, Donnelly said. I'm asking them to see I wasn't driven by greed. Closing arguments lasted hours. Wu's was clinical. If this man is allowed to claim higher morality as a shield, what stops anyone from robbing a bank and calling it justice? Good intentions don't erase harm. We can sympathize with his frustrations and still recognize what he did as a serious crime. You must convict. Riley's was more emotional. He is not innocent. He is also not simple. He is a man who spent decades in service, then committed a very serious crime for reasons he believed were moral. That doesn't make it legal, but it does make it different from ordinary theft. Remember that when you think about punishment, the jury deliberated for 14 hours over 2 days. On July 12, 2019, they returned, guilty on all counts. Donnelly didn't flinch. He just nodded slowly, as if the verdict confirmed what he'd expected from the start. 2 weeks later, Judge Patricia Morrison delivered the sentence. She spoke for almost an hour. You are, she said, an unusual defendant. Your life before this crime was marked by sacrifice and service. Your crime was marked by planning, betrayal, and a dangerous certainty that you knew best. The law cannot allow individuals to appoint themselves arbiters of justice. If everyone decided when theft was morally acceptable, we would have no law at all. However, justice is not blind to context. You did not enrich yourself. You tried in your own way to relieve suffering through a deeply misguided and unlawful act. She paused. Balancing these factors, I sentence you to 22 years in federal prison with eligibility for parole after 15. This reflects the gravity of your crime and the reality that you are not beyond redemption. Donnelly thanked the judge quietly as marshals led him away. Outside, reactions were split. Some thought 22 years was too harsh for a priest who hadn't kept a cent. Others thought it was too lenient for a $48 million heist. Processed into the federal system as inmate 44781112, Father Michael Donnelly had one final comment to a prison intake officer who asked if he had anything to say about the case. The math, he said, was correct. The morality, that's for the rest of you to keep arguing about. But as far as I'm concerned, the mission is finished.